Welcome back to Sent into Hell Part 2, President Xi's death sentence to Wuhan. We're giving you the how it's like to live in Wuhan. We're going to be the second hour of the show, episode 127, now with over 6 million downloads, live on the John Fredericks Radio Network, on America's Voice.news, which is the streaming platform for the Trump revolution. That is now Dish Channel 219, Newsmax TV, FM 99.1, 103.9 in Chicago, Nexus/IRS throughout the world. And for today's broadcast, we're going to talk about Epic Times, Gateway Pundit, New Tang, Dynasty TV, all of them streaming it, along with the Minnesota Sun, the Tennessee Star, the Ohio Star, and the Michigan Star, all those great newspapers that put the Trump movement's news and views up every day. So we're throughout the world. Jack Maxey, Raheem Kassam, we got Dan David of Wolfpack Research, but we've got an update from on Fang Fang.
Yeah, I think this is something really interesting. A wonderful award-winning poet and novelist who's world-renowned named Fang Fang in China has written a book called, simply titled, The Wuhan Diary, about her experience under the lockdown. And one of the things that she covers is how the spread of the disease and the quarantine really wreaked havoc on the people's lives, and especially how it destroyed families. Steve, you've talked a lot about how single-child policy has really made it so important, right? You know, you lose your child or you lose your parents, that's it. The whole family's gone. Well, she's been accused of being a traitor to the nation now because this book is being published in German and English, and they're trying to make her look like she's just undermining the CCP. Now, what was interesting, they interviewed some of her neighbors in Wuhan, and all of them said, no, everything that she says is true. We totally support her. She's not a traitor at all. And one of the people, her neighbors that they asked, said everyone loves his country, but the country and the government are two concepts. If someone criticizes the government, you cannot say that that person is a traitor to his country.
Wow. Very powerful.
Very powerful. Somebody to be quoted saying that is
very powerful.
He's getting a knock on his door.
Very proud. Exactly. No, the Chinese people are decent and hardworking people as you're ever going to meet. I've been over there since 1977 as a naval officer. Love the country, love the people. Hate the Chinese Communist Party because they're like the Nazis. No difference. Now I want to bring back Dan David from Wolfpack Research, also the star of the great documentary, The China Hustle, which showed you all the shenanigans that the Chinese Communist Party goes through. Dave, we've had reports from Bill Gertz, Miles Guo, talking about this Wuhan lab. You have researchers all over, and we've got this chairman of the former chairman of the oil company saying, hey, we're on a path to war now. They just arrested 15 of the leading freedom fighters in Hong Kong a couple hours ago, including Jimmy Lai, who's the founder of Apple News, which is the best newspaper in Hong Kong. Where do you think we stand right now? You probably, of any American, know what's the ground truth in China because you make your living in knowing the ground truth in China. Where do you think we stand right now with the Chinese Communist Party and the world?
Unfortunately, we're losing because China has been able to export a chill on the freedom of speech, even here in the United States. When the Chinese government talks about national pride and things that are important to them in China, that's just them being prideful of their nation or protecting their country. When we talk about protecting our country, we're racist. And they make us believe that. And it's this self-loathing that we have of each other that is really crippling us. And we really need to steel our resolve here and say, you know what? We're not racist. We are just trying to protect ourselves from pandemics, from unconventional financial warfare, from the chill on the freedom of speech in our universities. And it is happening gradually, but now it's really hitting a tipping point. And they know it. And they're, taking the South China Sea, it's theirs. Hong Kong's gone. I've been going to Hong Kong. I was the first freedom of speech activist to give a short report on a China-based company in Hong Kong in 2014. You can't do that now. You just can't. There's no freedom of speech in Hong Kong anymore. So I don't know what else we have to see to know that they do consider this war, that they have always considered it war. And again, it is the government. It's not the people. I get my information from the people who are helping us and want us to help them. But we're not doing it.
Dan, how can people get more information? How do your Twitter feed, more access to your writings, etc.? Because you're somebody that American people have to know in this time of this war that the CCP is running against the United States. How do they get to know this?
Well, they can see the documentary, The China Hustle. My Twitter feed is @WolfpackReports, and I focused on finance. You saw Luckin Coffee, the Starbucks of China, just went up in flames, a couple of weeks ago from one of my affiliates, Carson Block at Muddy Waters, and it's more and more. Hundreds of billions of dollars are being stolen from us, from our pensioners, and nobody goes to jail because it's not illegal in China to steal from a U.S. citizen. It's not illegal there to steal from us. Yet we have over $1 trillion listed on our exchange, not counting how much money we have in Hong Kong. And they continue to steal every single day. That's what I focus on if you come to @WolfpackReports on Twitter.
You're one of the smartest, toughest guys around. We're going to have you back on the show next week. Dan David from Wolfpack Research and the star of the China Hustle. Thank you very much for joining us today, sir.
Thank you, Steve.
Now honored, if we can do this shift, Vish, is to bring in Jun. That's his nom de plume, or nom de jour, I guess in this case, his nom de jour. He is a naturalized American citizen. He is a proud Trump supporter. And for these Chinese nationals and for the Chinese American citizens that we haven't bring on, we are going to make sure that we don't see their faces. And here's the reason. It's because if they came out straightforward, their families would be arrested immediately in mainland China. The intimidation and terror brought by the Chinese Communist Party on its own people is actually indescribable. But Jun and the other folks will be bringing in Dr. Bo hopefully later in the hour, and also Ali. They know the ground truth of what's happening in Wuhan. So we're ready to go. Is Jun there? Jun, can you hear me, sir?
Yes, sir. I can hear you, Mr. Bannon.
Hey, Jun, tell people a little bit about Wuhan, the Hubei province, its size, its scale, what's the history of Wuhan, how big it is. Because Americans are just now coming to understand the story.
Yes, sir. But first, I like to see a few words why I'm here today and who I speak for.
Sure.
I'm here to speak for VOG, the voice of Guo Media, and I like to speak for the people of Wuhan. So VOG is an online community. So we have about 40,000 people who supporting Miles Guo's whistleblowing movement. So one of our programs is to provide people from China a platform so that they can speak freely without fear. So what is actually happening in China? We broadcast twice a day to let people from Wuhan to tell their true story during this pandemic. Now, getting back to your question, so Wuhan is really located in central China. It has the size of France, 11 million people, so it's a big city, almost 40% of larger in population than New York City. Because this is a natural location, Wuhan is a transportation hub in China. People often call it Chicago of China, but just with much warmer and humid subtropical weather in summer. Two big rivers, Yangtze and Han River, running through the city. So it has, in bad years, it has big floods as well. But these two rivers divide the city into three towns like Wuchang, Hankou, and Wuhan. And this Wuhan, it really is a city with 3,500 years of long history and a rich culture. So one of the historical event you probably know is the 1911 Wuchang Uprising, also called Wuchang Revolution, that took down the Qing dynasty, that led to the founding of the Republic of China. The Republic of China we know nowadays is called Taiwan. It's where Chinese people freely enjoy the freedom and the democracy. Thank you, sir.
For our audience, and before we go about how the CCP did it, why can't you do a show every day? You've got 40,000 supporters. You get many more hundreds of thousands listening. Well, talk to us. What's the firewall, and why can't citizens of China, who are among the most educated in the world and the smartest in the world, we see this at university. I went to Harvard. Now Chinese are at Harvard, and they're doing fantastic. They're at all the Ivy League schools, American universities. They're the smartest guys in the class. Why can't they get free access? What is the firewall, and why can't the Chinese people get access to the internet?
So the free wall is really Chinese is to control the internet. Is restrict Chinese citizens to really to find out the truth outside the world. It's also the denied access to for the foreigners to China inside, because the Chinese Communist Party they don't want people from outside world to know what are actually happening inside China. So they build this wall just to try to hide the truth, to suppress the information, and to even lie to their citizens.
So tell the world right now, before they got the quarantine and this became a global story in late January, when this was first spreading, what was the Chinese Communist Party? What were they actually doing in Wuhan in that month of December and January before it became a national news? What were they actually doing to help the citizens of Wuhan stop the spread of this killer disease?
Yes, sir. So we know this virus originated from Wuhan. That's a fact. So CCP's Wuhan local government knew the spread of this virus in local hospital in the middle of December, actually. When Dr. Li Wenliang warned his colleagues of this virus on WeChat, Wuhan government decided to silence Dr. Li and downplay the seriousness. So telling Wuhan medical system not let public know this and must not share this information on internet. Any information about this virus online must be censored. The first thing CCP is hiding the information and lying to the public. So now on January 2nd, the Wuhan government has formed this virus emergency task force to address, quote, prevention and control this SARS-like epidemic, quote. This task force includes people from the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Public Security, Political and Legal Affairs Commission, even the people from the National Security Council. So the CCP leaders in Beijing know this virus from the beginning of the January. They knew it is contagious and transmissible from human to human, but they choose to cover up all the information for 3 weeks until the January 21st. Then they locked down Wuhan on January 23rd. The night before the lockdown, 300,000 Wuhan people fled out of the city. All this point to one conclusion. CCP failed to prevent and control the virus, and this is the cause of the global pandemic.
John,
it also covered up the data and the information about this virus by destroying samples, scrubbing contaminated areas, erasing early reports, holding back academic articles. So there is a scientist in Shanghai. They first published this genomic sequence of this virus, but the CCP retaliated and closed their lab. So
John, hang on for 1 second. I'm going to hold you over through the commercial break because we got to get into more details on this. John, who's part of the Voice of Guo Media, has a site that allows the Chinese people to actually communicate with each other on a daily basis, does a couple of shows to get freedom, blows through the firewall as they do with our show that's subtitled in Mandarin. We're going to come back in just a second. You're listening to War Room Pandemic live from Capitol Hill in our nation's capital. This is Descent into Hell Part 2, President Xi in the death sentence of Wuhan. We're going to turn with Greg Manns, Jack Maxey, Stephen K. Bannon, and Jun as we continue our coverage of Descent into Hell.
Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to War Room Pandemic. This is Descent into Hell Part 2, President Xi's death sentence on Wuhan. We're having people that have contacts in Wuhan, family in Wuhan, to know the citizens of Wuhan and talk to them daily. And many people that do these shows that go through the firewall so they have immediate access. It's a great tragedy what happened in Wuhan, and this is because of the Chinese Communist Party's either complete incompetence on the Chernobyl of the management of this P4 lab, this pathogen 4 lab, which are the most dangerous in the world, in Wuhan, or, as Miles Guo and other Chinese expatriates are saying, something far more sinister. They were not looking for a vaccine. They're actually working on a weapons program. Now, there's a report out today in French media that a former Nobel Prize winner, is actually saying that people have got to wake up. That's absolutely not natural. And that this initial report that we had, I think, on episode 3 in the show that we're going to redo from the Institute of Technology, the Indian Institute of Technology, IIT, which is the MIT of India. They had a report out in early February about that this was a man-made virus, and it had aspects of HIV, that they were trying to tinker with it. That was kind of dismissed at the time. They had some problems with their formulas. Even Dr. Hatfield was on here, said he thinks they missed it. It turns out that the French, the Nobel Prize winner, that story's up on Zero Hedge, and it's all over the place. I think it's on Agency France Presse. He's saying, hey, you guys were actually right. They had a few things wrong, but essentially this thing is some sort of unnatural virus. And we're going to get to all of that. So, everybody can come back and say, hey, you guys are cranks, your conspiracy theory. Hey, I'm hanging my hook now on a Nobel Prize winner, okay? This is not me. I got a C in biology from one of my football coach, right? So it's no, but it's we're just repeating and reporting of what some of the smartest minds in the world are saying. Okay, John is back on. We have the connection. We're John, real quickly, why would the CCP, why the Chinese Communist Party, why would they suppress this information? Why would they shut down the lab in Shanghai who's trying to report on the original genome sequencing of this? Why are they not being forthcoming in giving information to the world on this virus?
Yes, sir. Just as Miles Guo mentioned an hour ago, right? And because Lude Media, at the beginning of January, they discovered that the sequence of this virus has shared the very same identical sequence with a genome-modified beta virus, which was changed or modified by the Nanjing Command, the Institute of Military Medicine, back in 2018. Okay, at that time, the reason the Chinese military modified the bat virus is to make it more transmissible, has higher infectability, so that it can allow across-species transmission. Okay, so the sequence published by this scientist in Shanghai also revealed the same identical sequence information. I think the CCP suppressed this information out of fear because they want to hide the truth from not only from its own people but from the rest of the world. That hiding their true intention.
We're going to get up on the site.
Thank you, sir.
We're going to get up on the site everything from the Shanghai, all this situation. We're going to put the timeline together, the real timeline that the American people and the people of the world, and like someone said, I think Bill Gertz, much of the medical community, remember, we gave grants to, NIH gave grants, the CDC worked on the CDC thing. The world's medical community has to understand what's going on here, and they have to speak truth to power to the Chinese Communist Party. They have to stop looking at that as a paymaster. They have to stop looking at that as somebody that will fund research. They have to work with the world to have a full disclosure. And full disclosure means that elements of the World Health Organization, once under new management, and the CDC and others get to go to Wuhan, get to go to these labs. And we also have to confront the fact that we know it's an open secret in the intelligence community that they have an offensive biological warfare program that is specifically forbidden by the 1984 treaty that Deng Xiaoping signed. Is one of his. They had to sign it, right, to get access to all Western capital. They've lied about this from day one. Last thing, Jun, I want to ask you, if you were like Dr. Lee, if you were in China right now, in mainland China, and speaking so frankly and so freely, tell the American audience what would happen to you.
Oh, that's gonna be a really bad story. Not only for me, but also for my family, even friends or my colleagues, because the Chinese Communist Party used its police force, really turn China into a police state. So there are many people who disagree with the party, with the government. Okay, if I telling the truth even simply give a warning on internet. For example, on WeChat, it's like Chinese Twitter, saying that, my dear friends, be careful with this unknown disease. It's contagious. Please wear the mask. Wash your hands. Do more disinfection. Just the same thing I said, like Dr. Li did back in January. The government will consider you spread rumors. You cause the public panic. Okay, and you will be the traitor. And the punishment will be severe, not only to you, but also to your whole family. So that's why billions of Chinese people, they cannot speak the truth because of this fear, because they were being terrorized by the Chinese Communist Party in the last 70 years. And the Chinese people are the biggest victims in this disaster.
John,
Thank you, sir.
John, let me ask you, you've come to the United States. You're now an American citizen. You're, as you tell me, a proud Trump supporter. Why do you think, and I don't want to politicize this, but why do you think the mainstream media, why do the American people not understand the basics that we know from the Uyghurs and we know from the followers of the Dalai Lama and the Tibetan Buddhists, that we know from Cardinal Zen and the underground Catholic Church, that we know from the 100 million house Christians in China, that we know from the freedom fighters of the Tiananmen Square, that, you know, whether you're secular Chinese, whether you're religious Chinese, whether you're a Muslim, a Buddhist, a Falun Gong, a Catholic, a Christian, or just somebody who wants freedom, that you're suppressed, you're put into prisons, you can't have any freedom. What is it about the United States in the media that we don't understand this from your perspective, from someone that's left mainland China, that's come here, your family's still back there, that's where you can't come forward totally, but you're there and, you know, you're speaking the truth. What is it about our media that doesn't get what's so obvious about the torture and suppression of the Chinese people?
Thank you, Mr. Bannon. So our American audience need to understand one thing. The reason why we have such divisive society, the major issue is from the Chinese Communist Party. Just have some patience, hear me out. So the Chinese Communist Party leader are a group of criminals. So they control all the media in China and turn them into the propaganda machine to suppress the truth and spread disinformation inside China. That's a fact. But not only that, the CCP also stretched out its long arm to the world, even into the United States. The reason why is because due to the economic boom in China, the CCP now get the money to buying those so-called mainstream medium like CNN, MSNBC as the running dog and useful idiots, and use them to disinform the Americans and shift the blame from the CCP even to the United States. Okay, that's why our president are under attack by this so-called mainstream medium. It's because they got the order from the Chinese Communist Party. So we cannot let this happen anymore. As Americans, we must know CCP is the existential threat to the health and the safety of our country. Thank you, sir.
Okay, John, really appreciate it. I want to make sure that hopefully you stay safe and you know, continue your great work. And you're a great patriot. You're a great patriot for the Chinese people, and you're a great patriot for the American people. And you should know that the American people, in their hearts, want the freedom of the Chinese people and stop this just this awful oppression by the Chinese Communist Party. So thank you very much for joining us today on War Room Pandemic.
Thank you, Mr. Bannon.
One of the things that strikes me, guys, constantly, I've been doing this now for years and years and years, is that the Lao Beijing, old 100 names, the little guy in China, connection with the deplorables and kind of the working class and middle class here. But it boggles my mind every day. And you see that someone like Jun can get triggered and say, hey, CNN and MSNBC, but in their mind, they don't understand why things like the BBC and MSNBC and CNN do not see what's absolutely going on and report it. That this is just not – I mean, they do a little bit, but they're not – I mean, this thing right here, we should be all over. CNN should be running 10 hours a day on investigative reports into China about how this virus started and how the information was suppressed and how it came here and essentially destroying the world.
What's so sad to me is when we talk to all these dissidents from China is it reminds me of my education in communism back in the 70s and the 80s, meeting with so many people from – places like Hungary and behind the Iron Curtain, And they also were wanting to be heard by the American media and the American press. And let's remember, Ronald Reagan was seen as a lunatic by calling them the evil empire. You had Ted Kennedy trying to negotiate the 1980 election with the KGB.
Nobody brings that up.
And so there's always been this thing in the left in America to try and always perceive that communism is what it says it is rather than what it is. And so this is nothing new, but it's really quite tragic. It's something to do with the left. This desire to believe in the dream of Marxism is always something that bothers me.
I think one most important thing to take away today, besides Chinese nationalists, et cetera, is saying, hey, you guys are kidding yourselves. They got a biological weapons program, and somebody ought to bring this up and put that on the table to discuss how we're allowing that to happen, and known in the intelligence community, and known in the intelligence community in the world, and known by Chinese citizens that the Chinese military, the PLA, that's the owners of Huawei, have this, that it's not even talked about. And the suppression, if they come forward, it's totally suppressed. Okay, short commercial break. We're going to come back with Ali, another Chinese citizen, in a second.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to episode 127, now with over 6 million downloads on podcasts, and all. We're ubiquitous throughout the world, the entire world, including our brothers and sisters in China. Get to hear this every day on on G News and GTV, subtitled in Mandarin. Now I want to bring in Dr. Bo. Dr. Bo is also a naturalized American citizen. He has family and friends in Wuhan, in Hubei province, and he's here to talk to us about what it was like. Dr. Bo, tell us, when the Chinese Communist Party actually understood that they had a massive problem on their hands, and they went in to actually quarantine Wuhan. People here in the United States, I think we've gotten some videos and some reports, but what was it like when the Chinese Communist Party actually did the quarantine in Wuhan? What was that actually like?
Hello, Mr. Bannon. Great to be here. Hello, everybody. Now, the Chinese government admitted that the virus can be passed from human to human on January 20th, and then the city of Wuhan locked down on January 23rd. Okay, so by locking down, that means all the public transportation, like buses, trains, subways, and ferries, will all stop, and most of the flights were canceled as well. Okay. On the same day, 13 more cities in Hubei province followed Wuhan's action to lock down, and the public transportation stopped. Okay, there is no easy way to leave and go in these cities when it's in lockdown mode. And in the next several days, many more cities in China joined the Hubei for lockdown. It is like countrywide, lockdown campaign, through all the cities. So whether or not it is a citywide lockdown or not, inside all these cities in China, people were trapped. Okay, people were trapped in their apartments. Most people in China, they live in the cities like in Wuhan, they're living in gated communities with high-rise apartment buildings. Okay, and all these communities were locked down, and there were management personnel, the police force, the controlling the entry and exit of the community. Okay, which means every family, you have only like one person per 2 days to go out for shopping. Nobody go in, nobody go out. It's very heavily controlled. Nobody can go anywhere. Okay, and in the countryside, things are a little different. Lots of villages lock down themselves as well. But they do that by many of them. They destroy the roads going in the village, to stop outside traffic. So all these are done by the government issuing executive orders, because if you destroy the roads going in and out of a village, guess what? Ambulance can't go in either. So all these things are very, very badly planned and have a huge consequences, very bad consequences. Ms. Bannon.
What was tell me what was life once they locked down and you're in your apartment and trapped, you can't go out but every couple of days. I know that they came around and actually took temperatures, and if they felt you had the virus, they would just take you to a quarantine center. What was it like for citizens when they came to your door? You don't have any control over that. Can they take you anywhere they want, and how did they take you to these quarantine centers?
Well, you don't really have much a choice when the government want to, press you into, go into the quarantine and things like that. Okay, so it's in China, so CCP controls everything. Okay, those executive orders, they were just like many other executive orders issued by CCP government. Okay, they were not very well planned, and they don't take people into consideration. They only need to take control. They only need control. That's all they want. Okay, the situation in Wuhan, after the lockdown, quickly turned into a humanitarian disaster. Okay, that's just bad. Okay, because of lockdown, lots of people, they are leaving their apartment. They cannot go to the hospital when they feel sick. Why? Because the public transportation was all shut down. All right, and many, even if they can go, because of the delay of the information and everything, the cover up and everything, all the medical resources were depleted already. So all these sick people, they were turned back to go home for self-quarantine. And in turn, they get the whole family sick. Lots of families, entire families got infected and died in Wuhan. So that's a disaster. Okay, and I have some several stories here. Really heartbreaking stories. There is a family in Hubei. The father was forced to be quarantined somewhere else by the government, by the local government. Okay, and his son, who has a cerebral palsy, starved to death in his home. It's just horrible stories. And there's another story, is like a 6-year-old kid, who was found in his house with his grandparents already dead for days. He survived by eating crackers and drinking tap water. If they don't have crackers in the house, it's another tragedy. It's just like that. There are the government reported there are at least 400 pandemic orphans like him in China. 400, which means 400 families are all gone but the kid. So now, mostly in Hubei. Most of them are in Hubei and Wuhan. And now you tell me the death toll is 4,600? Come on. That got to be a lie. There are many cases like that.
Before we let you go, we got to jump here in a second. But last question. I want to get to that. Just doubled or increased by 50% the death toll. What was it like psychologically on the Chinese people not to be able to go and have these funerals and not to be able to go and do some ancestor worship and the appropriate ceremonies you should have when your elders or your family members die, that they're just taken away, cremated, and sometimes later you either get the ashes or maybe it's not even their ashes. What psychological scar is that going to leave on the Chinese people?
Well, first is furious. Everybody, Chinese people are very, family oriented. We love our families. We want to give them a proper burial when they perish, when they die. But now you can't, because you don't even know the ashes you get back are from your family member or not. Because how they do this is like in the crematories, they just put all the body together, they burn everything, and then they divide the ash by like portions. So you have, the ashes are like all mixed up together. You have all the different, a teeth from somebody else, a buckle from somebody else. It's not right. It's just a total humanitarian disaster in Wuhan. There are lots of cases like the whole family perished. There is not even anybody to claim the ash from crematory. So that's just a disaster. People are furious. That's one thing, but the country is the government, the CCP regime is crashing down on their furies. They cannot express their sorrow. They cannot express their true feelings about what happened, because what is for stability control. You have to, be stable. That's because if you are not, stable, if you are doing something erratic, if you're doing something out of the line, the police force, the government will just come down crashing on you. So for each individual person, that's just something unbearable.
Dr. Bo, thank you very much for joining us today on War and Pandemic, Descent into Hell, President Xi's death sentence on Wuhan. Really want to appreciate your account. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Bannon.
Do we have Ali? Is Ali? We're going to have Ali join us in a second for another. You see the agony these people are going through, right? In the traditional society where you honor, particularly the one-child policy, right? They've kind of taken away the traditional family where you have the big family unit. Now it's very small. But you see the situation, and some of the most heart-rendering videos we would put up from G News and from other people were the nurses who were married to some of the doctors were going and banging on the ambulances as they took them away dead to go be cremated and never see the body again, never have that ability to have that ceremony.
It shows you the great tragedy of these totalitarian systems. I mean, imagine living in a country where you can't even express your sorrow because you lost one of your parents or one of your loved ones because you're afraid of what the government will do to you. That is just unbelievably frightening to me.
I want to bring Ali on now. Ali, thank you very much for joining us on War Room Pandemic.
Good morning, Mr. Bannon. Thank you.
Ali is a Chinese national. So Ali, here in the West, we're getting all kind of different stories. President Trump said yesterday at his press conference he sees that the numbers are increasing. Talk to us about the scale of this disaster in Wuhan. How big was it really? Because in the West, we feel like we're getting played by the Chinese Communist Party. We hear one number one day, and quite frankly, like New York City is now, just the city of New York is, I think, 4 or 5 times what all of China was. So how bad was this in Wuhan, and what's the real numbers? What's the real impact and real scale on the people in Wuhan?
Yes, Mr. Bannon. First, let's talk about the infection. The numbers, not only the death number, the infection number, all the numbers actually in the calculation, it's hard to say it's real. From infections first, count for the infection. Person who infected without symptom is not counted as confirmed. And no test kits in the market, only in the certain hospitals appointed. That's number one. Number two, the people having symptoms will be tested first. But accuracy rate is 38%. It means test 3 times, only 1 time you are right. And there's a story about old man who reported in the newspaper saying that he was admitted to the ICU, and out of 5 times of testing, only 1, the last one, shows he's positive. And the sad thing is, second day he was passed away. So number 3, the people with light symptoms like coughing, fever, and difficult for breath, and you have to queue in the hospital. Most of the days, hundreds of people in front of you, and you have to wait from the early morning until late evening. Sometimes you have to wait until another day, only your turn to test. So this will cause much more affected people in the hospital. So this outbreak of CCP virus is just a sudden, and the whole Wuhan available beds at that time is 3,000 beds out of 50,000 beds at the moment of lockdown. That's why most people are ordered to stay at home by force, by police. So from this, we can see actually the hospital system already paralyzed. And then talk about the figures. I want to talk about from 16th of April before that, the death figure stopped at 2,579. But we don't trust that figure. Why? In China, CDC, in the year 2016, already set up a system of alarming and database allowed CDC collect any figure every 4 hours around whole China. During this hard time, why they didn't use this transparent system? This is a question. That makes us unknown and unrevealed with all the figures. But instead, they are using an intransparent system. It's method of calculation like this. Death in appointed coronavirus hospital only will
Ali, hang on for 1 second. Yep. We're going to keep you over through the commercial break. Yep. We want to get into depth with you on this. Okay. So we're going to take a short commercial break. We have Ali on the phone, who's a Chinese citizen, Chinese passport holder. We're going to take a short commercial break. It's Descent into Hell Part 2, President Xi in the death sentence of Wuhan. We now have Chinese nationals giving us the accounts of what actually happened in Hubei province in Wuhan. We're going to take a short commercial break. War Room Pandemic. Remember, it's episode 127, I think it is, and it's up to 6 million views. We'll be back live from Capitol Hill in 1 moment.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Live from our nation's capital, it's Saturday, the 18th of April, the year of our Lord 2020. This is Descent into Hell Part 2, Xi's death sentence to Wuhan. We're going to get back to Ali, our guest, in just a second. One of the things I'm most proud about all the production team in America's Voice, Newsmax TV, John Frederick's Radio Network, this is the only show in the country with all those big media apparatuses that actually allows Chinese people to tell you what it is to live under a regime that's every bit as criminal as the Nazis, okay? But that we finance and we allow their technology, and they're all over here at Capitol Hill, the Chinese Communist Party. They're at war with us. It's that simple. You're in your home today. You have no money, no pension fund. You're not out on a beautiful spring day. You weren't able to go do Passover like you normally do. You're not going to be able to do Ramadan like you've traditionally done. In 2,000 years, you weren't able to celebrate the risen Christ like we were supposed to for 2,000 years. 2,000 years, remember that. That's on you. Don't blame that on anybody. That's on you. And the reason is we've accepted the Chinese Communist Party to run the tables on us. They're at war with us. It's that simple. Do we have any hashtag War Room Pandemic? Do we have any listener feedback?
We got two great ones, and it's always fun when our listeners understand what our objectives are here. Someone wrote, without doubt, hashtag Miles Guo, hashtag Steve Bannon Alliance is the CCP's biggest nightmare. And then another listener wrote, watch hashtag War Room Pandemic. The populist nationalist freedom movement is humanity who are united globally to fight communism. It's that simple.
It's that simple. Our brothers and sisters in China, Lao Beijing, Old 100 Names, which is the name for the deplorables there, and the deplorables here, and in Europe and throughout the world, are going to unite to throw off these gangsters that have suppressed our brothers and sisters in China. And by the way, I'm on Maria Bartiromo tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. I think Peter Navarro, Tom Cotton. It should be full CCP beatdown, okay? Maria Bartiromo. I don't want to give you a hint on what the show is going to be. When I see a lineup, it's got Navarro, Cotton, and Bannon. It's going to be something. So I want to turn back to Ali now, who is a passport holder and Chinese citizen. Ali, give us a sense of what the scale of this was and how they've suppressed this information and what that means to you as a Chinese citizen and the people of Wuhan.
Thank you, Mr. Bannon. How we approach the real figure. So there are 7 funeral houses in Wuhan, 84 cremators. At normal time, each cremator runs 4 hours a day. But from January this year, each cremator run 24 hours, 3 shifts a day, 7 days a week. Reported by Chinese media, so-called media, Beijing, Shanghai, Xi'an City were sending their cremation operators to Wuhan because short of hands in operation. 3 shifts a day. Okay, another 40 mobile incinerators moved in Wuhan to burn the bodies that in remote area. So until approaching Qingming Festival, Qingming Festival is a tomb sweeping day for Chinese to remember their ancestors. So Wuhan government announced a plan to deliver minimum 500 units of cremation urn from 23rd of March until 5th of April, because 5th of April is the day. So they want to get their box of ash of their families to bury under the earth. So from there, we can count a figure. It's 500 times 7 times 13 days. It's about 45,500. This is a figure.
That's the real. That's the real deaths in Wuhan.
That shows part of the real death. That shows, and don't forget the newspaper and the government still. That's not enough until. It's said until mid of June, the whole cremation urn will be delivered to all the Wuhan citizens. Means part of it, only in an urgent time, they deliver that. But still, many of the citizens, they didn't get their families' cash.
Ali, we've got to bounce. We got one more thing we got to wrap up before we go, but we're going to have you back on probably next week. And I want to thank you very much for the courage to actually come on here and the bravery you show every day of being a freedom fighter for your fellow citizens back in China.
Thank you.
Great honor
Mr.
to have
Bannon.
you. Ali, we're going to have her back on, try to do this again, another special next weekend. I want to briefly turn to our colleague, Raheem Kassam. So, Raheem, you've had a chance to kind of watch this for the entire day. You helped us produce it. You got a couple of minutes. Give us your assessment of what you've seen and heard.
Well, look, I mean, can you hear me all right, Steve?
Yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah, no, never sure. Well, look, I mean, I think today, especially with the overnight arrest of a lot of the Hong Kong demonstrators, very high-profile ones at that, people really need to get to grips with what an extraordinary move this is on behalf of the CCP. I mean, Jimmy Lai was one of the ones you talked about who was the owner and director of the most Beijing news outlet there, but also Martin Lee, this 81-year-old, was very much the author or co-author of Hong Kong's basic law. That's effectively their constitution. That's sending a very strong message by the CCP. They're saying, we don't care who you are, we don't care about the rule of law, we don't care about the basic freedoms that you guys have enjoyed. We're going to arrest the very person who wrote those things. And that sends a very clear message at a time like this during a global pandemic, that they're not going to stop. They're not going to wind their necks in or hold anything back during this time. There's no lessons to be learned as far as they're concerned. This is full speed ahead for the CCP and the totalitarian endgame.
Raheem, we got about 30 seconds. Is the British government who actually cut the deal, are the Brits going to stand up to this? What do you think the Tory government and Boris Johnson, who views himself as Winston Churchill, what is he going to do about the arrest of 15 of the leading freedom fighters in Hong Kong overnight?
But probably nothing. I mean, much like the rest of the European political classes and the bureaucrats, they've washed their hands of any situations as far as it relates to colonialism. I mean, you've got the Chinese now lecturing the French about what they can and can't say in newspapers if they want fair trade terms, if they want anything to do with more PPE, etc., etc. 5G, obviously, we heard Huawei's threat to the United Kingdom last week. So I don't imagine the British establishment forces will do absolutely anything about this. I'm afraid to say that the yoke may well fall on the shoulders of the Sons of Liberty in the United States.
That's why we're here in War Room Pandemic. Raheem, thank you very much. We'll see you back here on Monday at 10 o'clock. Okay, tomorrow I'll be on Maria Bartiromo with Peter Navarro and Senator Tom Cotton. I think we'll be talking about the CCP, just a wild guess here. So we'll see. I'll be on tomorrow at 10, and we're back here live at 10 o'clock. I want to thank everybody of the production team, AVN, John Fredericks Radio Network, Vish, the entire crew. Descent into Hell Part 2, Xi's death sentence to Wuhan. We'll see you back on Monday morning.